All right. Obviously, excited to get back on the field. Variety of reasons, but a couple significant things. Our senior day. Some of these guys I saw. Somebody take a shot at Marquez and Poucho the other day. That those guys have been through a couple of these now, especially Pouch and Mike. It's kind of neat to see that happen again, and some guys that I think are going to go through it. To be quite honest, that don't know quite yet what next year lies. All right, so we'll have that. In addition to that, I'm sure you saw last night military appreciation. Jake Rosh, our equipment manager, got together and designed an eye emblem to kind of give a little significance to our military service. Have several of our players that have military background families to honor them. So a lot of that great going on. But the bottom line is to line up a Division West opponent to line up against Purdue. Rematch number 6 for us, a game that we unfortunately weren't able to win a year ago. A chance for us to come back and play them and see exactly where we are. So excited for a lot of reasons, but the chance to get back into Memorial and play a game at 11 o'clock is number one.
Injury updates on guys like Taz?
Taz is cleared. Taz practiced today, 100%. Really, the only other one, Seth Coleman, isn't 100% cleared yet, and Josh McCray will be a game time decision.
You said some other guys might go through senior day. Do you know who yet?
Yeah, for the most part, it's all the seniors that we significantly know, but there'll be a couple others. I just kind of want to let them handle that moment. Don't want to make it a story before it's a story, but
Gotcha.
I think you get this point in your career. Sometimes guys, I've been a little bit surprised. Some guys that obviously the easy one is guys that may move on and play to the next level. But then you got some guys. I think this whole COVID bonus year allows guys to have a year, but sometimes I think now guys have played a long time, and sometimes it's an opportunity to move on to the next phase of their life. And I think we got a little bit of everything going on.
Coach, you got this year that's been really nice year. How do you keep this going beyond this year? How do you make it not be a one-hit wonder?
Well, it's a great question. I would really say by week 1 and 2, myself, Pat Embleton, and our recruiting and personnel department have been meeting a lot about, potentially guys that we maybe before the season unforeseen are going to be leaving us. One of the critical mistakes I made at Arkansas was I lost 3 juniors going into what I thought was going to be a group of players coming back. Now, they were really good players, high draft picks, guys that played in the league for a long time. That was before the portal world, right? So, when I was at Wisconsin, I had really, I believe, only 2 players. J.J. Watt, P.J. Hill were only 2 players that left me ahead of their time.
Okay.
We had a culture there that kind of bred good players into their last couple of years, and they'd always kind of come back for more. So Arkansas, that was a very big, significant part of my last year there. Was literally the best player at 3 different positions that wasn't there when you were counting on it. So I've really tried to forecast, guys that are in that position here. If I lose them, we have to have a plan to replace them. All right, not only with our current roster, but because of the portal world, we can have a little bit easier access to things. We've done some quantitative measures. Last year a guy for us, Kendall Smith, is a guy that actually jumped in the portal, if you remember, and came back into our program in January, and it's been really fun for me the last month when those scouts come through. One of the guys that they ask the most about is Kendall Smith, right? A guy that's playing the best football of his career because he decided to come back. We lost a number of players, and we've kind of done a quantitative study, guys that left our program who have gone to other places, and put it in front of them if we have that same situation, like what those players have accomplished after they left us compared to the ones that stayed here. So that kind of all plays into roster development that is my responsibility as a head coach. It's something that can't be reactive. It's got to be proactive, and I think that's going to be the key. And then just continue to build. We do a 10-minute Devo walk at the beginning of practice. I don't know how many people are doing that. We got a Devo lift program during the 8-week window here before they leave for Christmas break that we are developing our younger players. So there's a lot of things happen every day in our building to sustain success.
Coach, you've been more efficient offensively when you've been able to get the running game going a little bit. Would you like to be able to force them to put the ball in the air 40, 50 times?
I think for us, defensively, what we have to do is do the things we do well, minimize our weaknesses, and then when we're playing an opponent, I think Purdue is a different preparation than last week. Not to give away game plans or tip anything, but I think Purdue has been able to win the games that they've won this year through maybe non-Purdue ways. So they've done it both ways. They've done it with their traditional way, but this year they added the run game in a couple games that were big factors. So what we have to do is get to Saturday to see how the game plays out and execute.
Ramos kind of established himself as a trick play guy, in this league. Is there a way to prepare for that, or you just have to trust your guys' discipline?
Unforeseen, there are certain things you can tell. Certain receivers are right-handed versus left-handed. You always want to make them aware of those things. Jones, because he's now in this program, I think you also have to look at what he's done in the past. Any opponent we're playing, we always obviously trick play research them, but also any of their players that have done anything previously if they've been part of a program as a portal player. And then also just projection, any coordinator, of course. Him and his brother kind of run the show, so they've always been tied together. But yeah, we do an extensive research on anything that they've shown in the past and forecast for the future.
The extension for Barry announced yesterday.
Yeah.
What was the process like behind that? When did that maybe start?
Yeah, so it really started when I was hired with Josh. We had a base pool that started with my original staff and talked about, where it was. But, if you have a good coach, Coach Fry always used to say, right, if you have a good coach, you can't keep him long enough. If you have a bad coach, you can't get rid of him quick enough, right? Once we had a situation where last year you realized what we were doing defensively, Josh came to me about the extension for Ryan, and that set the precedent for where we are this year. Going into bye week 1, we sat down, talked about our 2 coordinators. It's always, to me, it starts with the coordinators and then it permeates down. So we began discussions with Barry and Ryan. Barry's obviously was agreed to and talked to. We're still working with Ryan. Ryan is obviously a very accomplished coach, and I think he knows and understands how much we love him and what he's done. It's just there's a lot of irons in the fire with that one that we got to continue to work forward. Our strength staff, our assistant coaches, anything I can do to keep the good ones around us, we got to be able to do it.
I mean, you made the change after year 1 at offensive coordinator. I mean, was it best case scenario you'd be in a position to give the new one an extension in year 1? I mean, just for it to work out like that?
You know what? Each guy is probably a little bit different. I get the question, but to be quite honest, a lot of times your beginning salary at a place you come from is based on where you've been, right? And Barry was coming as a coordinator from UTSA, came into the position here. We had hoped and understood what we'd like to do, but I think by week 1, I knew where we were heading offensively. I still think we're in a really good upward trajectory. Just the way our players interact, the field, the vibe, recruiting has been a huge spike for us offensively to get our hands on playmakers that I think can fit this offense very, very well. And I know what Barry's invested in. I know how he thinks. I know how he coaches. That was a driving force, and fortunately for us, Josh and administration sees the same things.
I know you talked about Barry's impact in the building, but what has his impact been in maybe some of the recruiting pitches to some of those skill positions that you just mentioned?
Barry's as you guys have gotten to know, very dry, very direct. Him and Taylor Reed is a player that used to play for me at Arkansas that's here. They've done some point of attack tapes, some different things that are very specific for players. If you can project him, hey, this is the play that you run in high school, it's pretty good, and now all of a sudden he sees it live in our version, right, and he sees the carryover. Sometimes the power of visual proof is really, really powerful. Barry's done that big time since we've been here. Certain in-state prospects, out-state prospects. Hey, this, especially for us in the throw game, right, to have the receivers have the numbers they're at right now really gets wide receivers in our target area and in our top targets for recruiting. They understand we're not just verbiage here, we're not just projecting. This is the reality of where we're at. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's 3 players from UTSA that are now in the Blitnikoff too, right? Like that's not a common thing. Those are things Barry's helped recruit, develop. So not only where he's been, but where we're at, and more importantly, where our guys are going.
Are you happy with what you've seen in the red area in practice this week?
What's that?
Are you happy with what you've seen in the red area in practice this week? You made some strides?
Absolutely.
This system with Barry, what has he done to give you as much confidence so quickly in his tenure?
Barry's very confident. He's got his offense. What I loved, and I've said this a couple times, when I became my first coordinator title, right? I moved from Kansas State as a co-coordinator, and I went to Wisconsin, and Coach Alvarez said, put in your defense, right? You're going to be in a room with nobody else. Nobody else in that room knew our defense. All those coaches had worked for Coach Alvarez and that staff for a long time. He wanted me to teach those guys our defense. And I believe we were in game week 3, and we were the number 1 defense in the country. It went from 85 to 1. And I think that was a big moment for me to realize that what I was preaching and teaching, I've taught to the coaches who then could teach it to the players. Our starting free safety was a guy by the name of Jimmy Leonard, right? So we had good players as well. But Barry came in right away, taught our coaches. We didn't make any transition anywhere else. Obviously, Ben, because of his illness, there was a little bit of transition. But Barry came in and taught our staff. That staff then permeated into our players. Our players and our coaches were excited. I think game plan meetings right now, red area, first down, third down. It's fun to walk into those meetings and see the interaction and the input. But Barry is the guiding light. He makes the decisions, he makes the calls, and he accepts that responsibility, good and bad.
How
It's such a
significant?
resurgent year for your program. How would you characterize the role that Chase has played and what he's meant to that resurgence?
Chase Brown. Yeah, Chase. You know, it was kind of interesting. So obviously we knew Barry's extension was getting released, and they asked for a quote, and I think naturally you go to a quarterback, and Tommy would have been great, right? But I'm like, go to Chase, right? Because Chase saw where we were a year ago and where we are now, and I thought that was a very interesting perspective because he came in and you know he would firsthand witness the change, right? And that was something that Tommy wouldn't be able to speak to. So I thought it was interesting to see Chase's quote, and he talked about his first phone call with Barry, how that changed his thinking, how it's made him a better, not only a better player but a better teammate. The exciting part about Chase Brown is, you know, every day I meet with NFL scouts, and obviously we talk about his physical skills, but I say what this guy brings to your room, right? As a great player that demonstrates great practice habits, he gets great routines. He's a guy that on Wednesday goes to class from 11 in the morning till 7 at night, and then comes over and watches film afterwards. After he's already been in the building at 6 a.m. Right? So he understands the professional nature of it, and Chase Brown is the epitome of what we look for in this program.
How do you describe his running style and why does
He's very unique. You know, he glides, he runs, he stutters. I think there's three things that I always say. You know, as a running back, you usually fall into three categories: a speed, a power, or a shift. And he has the ability to run away from you, run through you, and make you miss, and that's very uncommon.
How significant is cold weather?
You know,
for
I
this
just made
game?
the point today, right? So just literally walking the field, I said, hey, what we're feeling right now, right, could be 30 degrees colder on Saturday from where we're at. So we got a little bit of it at the beginning of the week. I told those guys when we're up early in the morning, feel that cold, get as braced as hard as we can. Tomorrow, we normally are indoor for our walkthrough, but we may go outside just because I think tomorrow's going to be a little bit colder. So our guys have been in cold weather, but we've been in the weather we had last Saturday too, so we got to prepare for the moment.